And self-reporting, I resemble that remark. Good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Out to Lars Larson Show. Catch him weeknights at 6 right here on KIDO Talk Radio. Lars, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today, Kevin?
You know, I spent the weekend watching game tape of all the CNN town hall meetings, and it's fascinating. I still go back to your one-on-one with the mayor of South Bend. You know how to pronounce his last name. I'll just call him Mayor Pete. And his
Pete Buttigieg is the way he told me to send it. Except with a G, so it's Jedge, but it's easier to remember as Pete Buttigieg. You're 99% of the way there, and that's the way he told me to describe it, like Buttigieg.
It's in his unlikely rise. He's number 3 in the polls, number 3 with the money. Debates are starting in a couple months. I go back to you. You've been there. You've done it. You've seen everything. You continue to cover the news that matters to all of us. When you're interviewing this guy, did he seem like anything special?
No, he really didn't. I mean, we were talking to him about some of the local controversies in his community, and it seems, look, I've got gay friends, I've got gay coworkers. I really don't care who you sleep with. It doesn't affect me. But it seems as though he wears this on his sleeve. This is an important issue for him. And it's an important issue, I guess, for Americans in the sense that we should respect other people's privacy. But when you start to use it as a way to, let's say, pick a fight with the current vice president of the United States, Mike Pence, who's a devout Christian man who believes in traditional marriage. And I think there are issues that we ought to tackle in this society, but suggesting that you are effectively not allowed to believe anything other than what the politically correct tell you to believe is a dangerous thought. America is a pluralistic society. I have neighbors who are Christians. I have neighbors who are from other faiths. I have friends who are Jewish. I have friends who are Muslim. I have friends who are Christian. And I have friends who are not particularly religious at all. In this country, we respect your right to follow your faith or to have no faith at all. Now, if somebody asked me who was faithless, said, well, what do you think? I'd say, I think you'd find salvation in Jesus Christ. If they ask me, but I don't shove Christianity in their face, and neither do I think that people should shove their sexual beliefs in other people's faces and demand you must believe as I believe. In fact, Friday night, that I was getting an award from the National Right to Work Foundation, so I was doing the show from the Reagan Library. And there's a great friend of mine who I work with who is Jewish. We didn't know what was going to happen, the terrible shooting was going to happen the next day, but he lives down in Southern California. And his family is very faithful in their Jewish faith. But they, we were talking about vaccinations, and he and I completely disagree about government mandates for vaccinating children who are going to attend public school. And we were having a great conversation about it. And I didn't tell him that he had to believe as I believe. Either about his religious faith or about his beliefs about vaccination. I said, you're kind of a libertarian. He said, no, I'm an anarchist. And I said, okay, fine, but public health is a different matter. But I also don't try to talk him out of his Jewish faith. That's not my place. Now, if somebody asks me, I'll be happy to tell them about my Christian faith. But for all of these things in which we're allowed to believe as we choose, unless your beliefs extend to, let's say, murdering people, like this John Earnest who murdered people at a synagogue on Saturday, I would be happy to tell him, if you do not act as society dictates, then you're going to prison. I wish he was going for the needle in California, but I don't have a lot of faith that California will execute this man for the terrible crime that he's identified as committing on Saturday. But you see what I'm saying, is that we are a country that respects many points of view, many faiths, and your right to choose as you like. The minute we start dictating to folks and say, you must believe as I believe, or you are banned from the public square, there are literally Democrats out there, Kevin, who believe that if you're a devout Catholic or Christian and you believe in the right to life, that you have no position. You are not qualified to be a federal judge because you might take a case in front of you that questions whether or not a particular abortion law is right or wrong, and they believe that I believe that people who are judges can actually look at the law and say, my personal beliefs may go this direction, but the law says that, or vice versa. And so the Constitution actually forbids a test, a religious test. We decided, in fact, when I have conservative callers who call in and say, we shouldn't allow any Muslims to be judges or to run for office, I vehemently disagree with them. Why? Because you have a right to believe as you believe. But what you don't have a right to do is shove your beliefs on me and suggest if you don't believe as I believe, then you need to be banned from the public square. That appears to be the fight that Pete Buttigieg has been trying to provoke with the vice president, because Buttigieg believes that his marriage to a man is legitimate, and he believes that he has a right to practice whatever sexual practices he wants behind closed doors. I believe he does have a right to practice his sexual practices behind closed doors. I do not think that gay marriage is found in the U.S. Constitution. I know the Supreme Court disagreed, but you know what? As an American, I'm free to disagree with the Supreme Court. I do accept that the Supreme Court is, the last word on issues like this, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with them. But to go out and deliberately pick fights with people because they believe one way and you believe another way, I think is just dead wrong.
Lars Larson joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Catch him tonight at 6. Also catch him LarsLarson.com, Lars Larson Show, Facebook, social media. He's everywhere. Lars, let's talk about Uncle Joe. Your thoughts. Let's talk about the usual suspects. It's been a while.
Nuzzlin' Joe, we call him. And somebody wrote me a nasty note this morning and was going at me because I had said that Joe Biden had engaged in this kind of behavior literally for at least years, perhaps decades, where he is way too familiar, I guess is the most polite way to put it, with both women and children, and that he puts his hands on them in ways that make people feel uncomfortable, and he behaves toward them in a way. I mean, if I walked up in a crowded area, I'm going to a listener event in Seattle on later on this week on Thursday night, and I don't walk around putting my hands on women who are not my wife. If my wife goes with me and she won't be able to make this trip, then I can put my arm around her waist. I can put my hands on her shoulder. I can smell her hair. Joe Biden does this to people who are not strangers, but they are people he barely knows, the wives of people who've been appointed to various offices and all that. This is the kind of behavior that if you do it on more, I think if you do it more than once, maybe even once is enough, in a workplace, you get fired. And why? Because it makes people feel uncomfortable. You should behave professionally. Joe doesn't have that filter. And Joe also has a lot of policy positions that I disagree with. And Biden is laughing off the fact that he's pretty old. He's about 7 years older than President Trump. And so if elected, I think he'd be close to 70. He'd almost be 79 when he took the oath of office. He'd be in his early 80s when he finished his first term if he were elected. And I think that's an issue. I have many friends who were in business and did many, many things into their 80s and 90s. So I'm not suggesting that people at a certain age are incompetent. But the presidency is a very tough job. And it takes on the responsibility of the safety of 300 million people, a third of a billion people. I think you need people in that job who are both mentally there, and I think Joe's got a screw loose, and I think it also requires a really vigorous personality. Hillary Clinton could barely make it through campaign events. She'd fall downstairs, she'd collapse next to her van. She was clearly, and health is an issue, Kevin. You can say, well, you can't just discriminate based on age. I can discriminate based on ability. And if you are applying for a job and you are not able to do it, then that's a concern. And I think at his age, that's a legitimate reason, legitimate issue to bring up. I mean, Donald Trump, you could have said, well, geez, Donald Trump's almost 70 when he takes the oath of office. Actually, I think he had turned 70 the year he took the oath of office. I may have my numbers off on that. But the fact is, he showed us that he's got more vigor than people half his age. He's up early in the morning, he's up late at night, he travels internationally, and he never seems to run out of energy.
Lars Larson, we could say the same for you. Our great friend Lars Larson joining us. What do you make of all the other contenders? Does anybody else pop? How about Crazy Bernie or Elizabeth Warren?
Well, Bernie Sanders is what he is. He's not even a Democrat, but he's seeking the Democrat nomination. And check me if you don't think that's true. He's officially not a member of the Democrat Party. He's also proposed a number of things that I think should be disqualifiers. Do you remember the promise from Obama? If you like your health plan, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. Well, Bernie's plan says this: you aren't going to get to keep your doctor or your health plan. We're going to replace it with a one-size-fits-all, government-operated Medicare for all. Now, that's nuts. First of all, price tag. Over 10 years, $32 trillion, and nobody has disputed those estimates. And that estimate actually comes from everybody from conservative Republicans to Hillary Clinton herself, who questioned Joe Biden during the last race, when she was seeking the nomination before she cheated him out of the nomination, and she did cheat him. She said, this is too expensive. Well, to put $3.2 trillion in perspective, the current federal budget is a little over $4 trillion. So you're talking about adding 75% to the current budget of the federal government, and the federal government does not spend within its means now. So if you're already overspending your income, which the federal government does now by close to $1 trillion a year, and you say, let's add $3 trillion in new costs, you say, where's that money going to come from? And the obvious answer is taxes. Now, Bernie says, well, this is going to be a sweet deal because your employer won't have to pay for your health care plan anymore. You won't have to pay for it. You'll get Medicare. I urge you to talk to a few doctors about Medicare because there are two issues here. One, that people on Medicare, if they're reasonably healthy and if they already have a doctor relationship formed, they're probably okay. But talk to somebody who's just going on Medicare, and if they have any serious problems and they call around looking for a doctor, there are a lot of doctors who aren't taking new Medicare patients. Why? Because the amount of money they get paid for the procedures they do falls well short of $1 for $1. Medicare compensation rates are deliberately low, which is how the folks who are fans of this plan say, well, it'll be cheaper. Do you know how you make health care cheaper? You either deny care to some, and that happens in every country that has a national health care plan, Canada, Scotland, the United Kingdom, etc. They all limit care, and they usually do it with wait times. In Canada, and again, if you don't believe me, do a keyword search in the Canadian newspapers, the big ones, the ones that people say these folks give us straight information, and look at wait times. In one number that sticks out to me, the goal in the Canadian healthcare plan is that every patient who is told by his or her doctor, you need to see a heart specialist, a cardiologist, their goal is to get 50% of them to a cardiologist within 6 months. Now, think about that, Kevin. Your mom, I hope your mom's still around. Mine is not. Your mom goes to her doctor and he says, you've got some problems and you need to see a cardiologist. Great. When can I see him? Well, we're shooting for getting 50% of patients like you into a cardiologist in 6 months. Now, when your mom tells you that, you might say to your mom, Mom, your doctor thinks you've got a heart problem and you can't see a cardiologist for 6 months? What happens in the meantime? Well, in many cases, people die in the meantime. And that's the ugly, but God's honest truth. So what does that do for the system? Saves the system a lot of money. Because if a bunch of your patients simply die before they get the care that they need, it doesn't cost the system as much money. But that's one way to deliberately ration care. So if you say, well, you'll get it in 6 months if you're still alive, good luck. And this is why so many people from Canada come to America and pay out of pocket to get medical care. Why? Because in their own country, they may have to wait until they're dead to get medical care. And that's insane. We have a good medical care system now. If you say, well, it's more expensive here, yes. My father-in-law was in, his doctor thought he should have an angiogram. They ran a catheter up his femoral artery into his heart to look for blockages. And the patient is awake during this, but has anesthesia for for where they've cut into you and are putting his catheter. They want to see you awake. And the doctor looked at him and said, well, you're going into surgery this afternoon. Why? He had found a blockage. In Canada, he would have been told, yep, you'll go into surgery sometime in the next few months, but one of your coronary arteries is blocked. So in other words, you may be dead, but we're promising you the proper care in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe longer. As I said, their goal is to get 50% of the patients in to see a doctor within 6 months. Now, that's a death sentence for a lot of people. If you want the same kind of government that has run the VA medical system, where they lied to veterans and kept them standing in line till some of them died, if you want that same kind of medical care, well, then you must have a death wish. And that's one of Bernie's biggest planks to his platform.
Lars Larson, you can catch him tonight at 6. Hope you had a great weekend, brother.
Oh, I had a fantastic weekend, and I get to see my granddaughter next weekend. She's coming over for the whole weekend. And then in a few weeks, Tina and I are going to take her down to Disneyland. Because this is the time of year when radio people don't take time off, we'll fly down on Friday night, take her to Disney all day on Saturday, and then come back. And fortunately, it's not a long flight.
Lars, great to hear that. You have a great day, sir.
Yeah, and you as well, Kevin. Take care now.
Our great friend Lars Larson joining us. Catch him tonight at 6. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Much more quickly than they could with Christchurch, but that is a real issue.
Yeah, and one that I think that Silicon Valley should have their feet held to the fire. I do think when we're having conversations about anti-Semitism, we should be looking at the most extreme on both sides. And I would bring up Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and some of her comments that got so much attention. And in my opinion, Nancy Pelosi wasn't hard enough in her response to her, trafficking in anti-Semitic language, talking about all about the Benjamins and how Jewish people had hypnotized the world. So I think when you're talking about rhetoric and you want to talk about President Trump, and by the way, I agree that he needs to have his feet held to the fire as well, but we're talking about it on both sides of the aisle as well.
But I think part of it...
There we have it, Meghan McCain, for those comments concerning politicians' language. She was ripped and ridiculed on something called Twitter. Good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. As we take your calls and talk about the issues that matter to you, people are saying, well, we have a white supremacist, a white nationalist problem in America today. Have you heard anybody besides the media say that? Has anybody in law enforcement said that? And they seek to blame President Trump for the tragic synagogue shootings. Liberty Linda joins us now. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Kevin. Kevin, how do we know that this man, this person that did the shooting in Poway, how does he know if he doesn't have Jewish blood in him? That's the question. How many white people have Jewish blood and they don't even know it? So,
Not me.
Is he going to shoot himself just because he has Jewish blood? No, I don't think so. So there's no common sense to this whatsoever. It's just people being worked up to hate another type of person. And, it's just, and these shootings, these are wonderful people. They could be very religious, love God, and I just don't see any reason to it. The actual person that goes out and does the shooting could be of Judah himself. That's my point this morning. And does it make any sense to you?
Well, it makes no sense to blame President Trump.
Oh, no, not Trump, President Trump either. No one. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. This person that did the shooting, he may be full of the blood of Judah. He doesn't even know it. It's just that people teach others to hate other people just because of who they are. The same with President Trump. Look what he's done for our nation. There was a guy that called in from Los Angeles during President Trump's election, and he said the same thing happened to him as what happened to us, in Boise or in the Treasure Valley, that he was wearing a Make America Great hat, and he would have a Trump bumper sticker on his car, and people in Los Angeles kept driving up on his bumper, hitting him in the back of his car to where he had to take his bumper sticker off. And he said, not again, not again, not in this next election. He will not take it off no matter what they do. Same thing happened to us. So these things are going on in our beautiful United States. And then also, it sounds like hot dogs and the NRA are out in New York just because the mayor doesn't want them there. Is that in our Constitution, Kevin?
The right to keep a hot dog. Liberty Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. Kevin Miller in the morning. Coming up next, your calls about the pay of university presidents. Is that a proper return on investment? Student loan debt, and, of course, more on the tragic synagogue shooting and how the gun grabbers are using it to promote their agenda. Is that fair? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio, phone numbers 580-5436. 580-KIDO. We go to the publisher of the Gem State Patriot, Tea Party Bob. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you this fine day? And I hope you had a great weekend.
I did. I watched The Polka King again.
Oh, what a great movie, huh? We should get everybody to watch that. Maybe we do a preview for it. I'm not quite sure why you keep trashing the growing of hemp as an industrial product, but you are so far off base when you try to tie marijuana to hemp, as they have very little, if nothing, to do with one another, but for the fact that they come from the same family of plants. I liken what you're doing and claiming as if there were a twin brother that was bad, and his other twin is going to be colored with the same problems that he has. It's not so. They are two different things. He complained that hemp uses too much water. I've told you time and time again that it is not a big user of water, as many of the other products grown in Idaho. And these are not made up by consumption numbers. These are from authoritative sources.
Now, I need you to hold. Can you hold the floor for a minute?
Sure.
All right. We're a little informal here. Back to Tea Party Bob and his pro-hemp stance in a minute. First, John Decker joins us, Fox News Radio. On KIDO Talk Radio, you're very special, John. It's very few people that we asked Tea Party Bob to yield his floor time to.
Oh, well, thank you, Tea Party Bob. I appreciate it. Thanks for yielding your floor, yielding your time. Always great to be on your show, Kevin.
Well, we try to make sure it's never a dull moment. John Decker joining us live from the White House. I thought of you Saturday night. It was the White House Correspondents' Dinner, a very different event than previous ones.
Well, that's right. You're absolutely right for a number of reasons. This was my 24th time at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and it was a different vibe than I've ever experienced, actually. No president. That's the third year in a row the president hasn't attended the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but also no entertainment, no comedian. And so that was different than all of the other times that I've attended the dinner. And I think that the dinner was worse for both of those reasons. And so hopefully they make the appropriate changes for next year. Hopefully the president comes and attends and we get some entertainment. But look, this is the new reality. The president spent his Saturday night out in Green Bay, Wisconsin with his supporters, doing a campaign rally, and quite frankly, I think the president much rather preferred being with his supporters in Green Bay than he would be, wearing black tie in Washington, D.C.
Well, I love, John, his line, Saturday night with Trump. What could be better?
Well, we got over 10,000 people to show up and see him, and Wisconsin's going to be one of those states that's going to be so critical for both the president and Democrats in 2020. President Trump won that state in 2016, in large part because Hillary Clinton never visited Wisconsin. Go figure that one out. And I think the president's trying to build on the success that he had in 2016.
Speaking of the president, hitting the road, meeting with the NRA, getting a little downtime, he seems to be ready to go, and I'm sure he'll react to Joe Biden's big campaign rally in Pittsburgh today.
Well, Joe Biden, as you mentioned, having his first rally, that's going to be in Pittsburgh, and I think it's a good spot for Joe Biden. He's trying to reach out to the same type of demographic group that went for President Trump in 2016. That's white working-class voters, and you got a big demographic group of those types of voters in Pittsburgh, places like Pittsburgh, and so, Joe Biden is trying to make sure that demographic group goes for him in the Democratic primaries. You first have to win the nomination before you can think about taking on President Trump.
Of course, it'll be interesting to see how Biden does this. Third time could be a charm. Anything else on the horizons for the president this week? I know that's a general question, John.
Well, no, it's a good question. The president tomorrow is going to be meeting here at the White House in the Oval Office with Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader. Hopefully it'll be a different type of outcome than the last time they met in the Oval Office. You remember that towards the end of December. But they're trying to find some common ground on legislation. And I think that two areas in which they can perhaps find some common ground are the areas of infrastructure spending and also trying to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. And we'll see what other issues they end up talking about during their meeting tomorrow in the Oval Office.
John, we appreciate you as always. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Have a great day.
You too. 24 years in the White House, 24 years at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and we go from him back to Tea Party Bob on KIDO Talk Radio. Your floor time is yours, sir.
So as I was saying, you continue to complain about the growing of hemp's return on investment, that it has declined from 80,000 to 20,000, but you don't cite any reliable sources of your information.
Yeah, I do, because it was a published report. You had somebody from the Hemp Association saying the same thing.
I don't care. Okay, I'm going to finish this up just because I want to make a point.
Sure.
Even if it has declined to 20,000 an acre, it is still much more valuable than any other crop grown in Idaho. Everything is regulated by market forces, as Mr. Pesso often says on your show. So the price of hemp will fluctuate with the volume produced like any other commodity. This is a good crop for Idaho to plant and harvest, not just from a monetary standpoint, but it's a great rotation crop for our farmers and has a multitude of uses. So you need to get off your high horse and stop complaining about a product that is so good and beneficial for our state just because it happens to be a relative of a bad product.
And apparently the legislators agree with Kevin Miller and not Tea Party Bob.
Well, that will change next year. That I will promise you. Sure. On urban renewal.
Hey, before you go now, didn't you get into it with Max? Didn't Max say something about you?
Max always says something about me.
Would you like to confront him?
Think. Max doesn't always think clearly.
All right. Well, here's Max and Tea Party Bob. Have at it.
Good morning, Tea Party Bob.
Good morning, Max. How are you today?
Buddy, believe it or not, I'm calling because I'm on your side.
Oh, that's no fun.
I really do think clearly pretty much all the time, honestly.
You see, the only thing you got wrong is I have never been for marijuana. I lost a godson to marijuana because he went into worse drugs. He died at 44. So
marijuana is some insidious stuff.
It's not something I've ever promoted, and you need to understand that. The only thing I have ever promoted is CBD oil for medicinal purposes. And I
agree with you on
marijuana.
That. By the way, I want to apologize. I may have misheard your name. Somebody about 10 days ago said that people like Max and other doctors who were against marijuana were wrong. But
that sounds like Tea Party Bob.
Okay, was it okay? Because I've never been pro marijuana under any circumstances, and I've never seen a medical study anywhere. Guys out there, Idaho, listen up. I want a peer-reviewed, double-blind study that shows that marijuana can be as effective or more effective than current, I'm talking long-term, medications that have been on the market 30, 40 years. I think hemp's a good idea.
Max, you do need to read one article, and it has to do with the fact that the NIH and CDC have a patent on marijuana and some of the properties of it. They've had it for years. Read through it, and you'll understand why people talk about it that way. We give millions of dollars a year to Israel to do research on marijuana. Millions. Okay?
And out of all that money, they've not been able to prove that it has a medical benefit.
Then why does the U.S. government have a patent on it?
Well, obviously, they're in it to make money. Come on, Tea Party Bob. Do you think the U.S. government really gives a rat's tail about what happens to us, the little people?
No, the pharmaceutical companies do, though. They give a shit because they make a lot of money from it.
Okay, but they only care about our money and not our well-being. Otherwise, they'd have cured so many diseases.
But they're controlled by the government, Max. You know that. They're controlled by the government.
Well, no, I
if
think
the
they
government
control the
comes
government.
down on them, well, and that's true, too. They have the biggest lobby in the country.
Now, by the way, I want to say something in your favor. I think that hemp could, Kevin, I like you, but
well,
you're
both wrong about hemp.
Well, I
Hemp's
think
going
that
nowhere.
Hemp should, you know what? Let's let the market decide. Let the hemp product be grown. Let farmers cultivate it in a scientific fashion. Idaho has some of the most advanced agricultural practices in the country. Our farmers are more than just the salt of the earth. They're scientists.
Sure.
They're good at what they
and I'm with
agree.
you, but on the other hand, the hemp argument reminds me of just about every other argument. Reminds me of the Medicaid expansion argument. Hey, we've got free money. Hey, we're going to make $50,000 an acre. Now it's down to $20,000 an acre.
Kevin,
it'll be down to 10. It'll
be
be down to 5. And for what?
Kevin, I have a challenge.
Yeah.
I would like you to come up with a study, a report, something peer-reviewed that tells me that hemp can lead to marijuana.
Oh, it's happened in every state. It's the gateway.
Oh, Kevin,
I don't have to. I don't have. Look, I can take both of you on with both hands behind my back. I don't have to come up with
both your hands behind your back.
Very good point.
Very
good point. However, look, I just have to agree with law enforcement. They say, you know something? We don't have the machinery to test the difference between hemp and marijuana. It's going to undermine all of our drug-free efforts. Case point, checkmate. Kevin Miller wins.
Kevin Miller, I love law enforcement. I love cops, but police have never been noted for their blinding intellect. Okay, they have a focus. They have blinders on. They're not looking at the whole picture because they're too busy protecting us and drawing chalk around the bodies.
That's not nice.
Amen, Max. Amen.
Well, there we go. The two biggest promoters of law enforcement, not you two. That's for sure.
Let the farmers worry about the hemp growing.
What did I just say about police? I said, I love these guys. They're doing their job.
And then you insulted their mentality. Come on.
Well, they're not. Hey, have you ever seen an ad that says wanted police recruits must be highly intelligent? Oh, come on.
How dare you?
How dare you?
Well, that's my line.
This is Tea Party Bob.
Yeah.
Dog pile on the Kevin.
Kevin,
well,
I hope you have a wonderful day because you're losing this argument.
You're running. You're running. Go ahead and run, Tea Party Bob.
I'm right here. I'm on the line.
I know Max isn't running. Max doesn't. He's not afraid.
Tea Party. Come on, Tea Party Bob. You don't run, buddy.
You have to understand something, Kevin. You come up with a lot of great ideas and great suggestions, but you are so far off base on this. You're not even in the ballpark.
Well, that's
that
not
stadium
nice.
they're building down there, you're not even there.
Well, it's not going to happen.
I still give you an A.
Thank you, Max.
I don't give you an A+.
You've moved up the power
you
rankings.
are right 90% of the time.
I am.
On this issue, I do think that you're wrong, my friend.
Well, no one's sorrier than I am, boss.
Hey, but you know what? I'm with you on distracted driving. I'm with you on the food tax. Hey, morons! These guys lied to you. They said they were going to retract the food tax, and the minute they got elected, they're laughing at you right now. They're laughing at every single listener, saying, "Ha! We got in. These suckers believed us again."
Well, you're making Tea Party Bob seem nice.
Well, Kevin,
no, Tea Party Bob
who was the first one to come out and complain about the food tax?
Well, it'd probably be a fatty like me. Always get him with the fatty line.
I've written about this so many times. I went down and testified in 2015. We've been trying to get this changed.
Well, now is the time.
Nobody cares.
Well, we all care.
Cares.
Max, thank you.
The mere fact that it was passed is a crime.
It is, Max. Thank you for
It shows that the voters are also not noted for their blinding intellect.
Well, we don't want to insult the voters. Max, thank you for the call. Tea Party Bob, thank you for the call. How do we react to that statement? Coming up next, public enemy number one, the fatties. Full disclosure next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Well, this just in, Saudi Arabia beheading more gay people, recruiting more executioners. More details coming up, I'm sure, with Glenn Beck. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Apparently, they killed 37 people in one bloody day looking at targeting a record number of people, and they actually have the guy swinging the thing. It's not a guillotine. Troubling when you think about our values versus the rest of the world. And when people come back and say, well, America is intolerant, America is this, just take a look at some of our friends, and even more disturbing, some of our enemies across the world. By the way, this just in, hitting Drudge over the weekend, obesity significantly increases risk of serious disease and early death, warning the researchers. So now, if you're a fatty, you're public enemy number one. Now, I can say that like all identity politics because I am fat. I'm morbidly obese. People see me all the time. In fact, I was fat shamed on a recent flight. Two little skinnies were next to me, and they didn't like it that I took up more of the seat. I felt bad about that and wrangled my big carcass out into the aisle. But even then, that wasn't enough for the two little slender folks that were very upset. And again, when in the end, they were leaning into me more than I was leaning into them. Being obese is linked to a significantly higher chance of serious disease and early death than being a healthy weight. Really? That's worthwhile? According to new research from 2.8 million adults suggest the chance of suffering a serious illness goes up with increasing weight and weight gain. Experts analyzing health data and sickness from the United Kingdom found. Now it goes on and on about the BMI and the European Congress and everything else. Of course, we saw this argument. I predicted this on the old Buchanan and Press store show in, I guess the late 90s on MSNBC, when I said first it will be the smokers, then it will be someone else, and then it will be time for the cheeseburger tax. It really comes down to this in America today. I think most people like me that are big, that are fatties, whatever you want to call us, that are large, that are rotund, that are plump. I mean, look at Rebel Wilson. I mean, she's made a career out of being the fat girl. I think most people understand the risks, and they choose to have the delicious food served up to us by the big corporate, by big food, and sit back and understand the risks. And then you have these studies coming out. Yes, if you're more fit, obviously you're going to live longer. Maybe some people don't want to do that. They want to enjoy their lives. Just like some people, despite the vilification of the smokers, choose to smoke or choose to drink or choose to smoke marijuana or choose to do something illegal. Even a BMI of 25 to 30, whatever that means, increase the risk of 20%, while a BMI of 30 or 40 double the risk, 40 to 45, almost quadruple the risk compared to a normal weight. And then we talk about type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea and type 2 diabetes. That treatment is big business. And I would say to you that if you do have a problem with weight or you don't, as a public service, putting aside the character, putting aside everything else, that you should go to take a sleep study, no matter if you're thin or not, if you're snoring, if you're waking up in the middle of the night. For years I did that, and there was one person, and I've said the story again and again and again, who saved my life, and that was Liberal Steve, who told me about the sleep test and getting the test. And it's not easy having something on yourself the whole night, but if it gets you air to your lungs so you're not starving yourself and your brain and not bringing on a heart attack, then it's well worth it. And look, personally, I don't want to be the guy that's speaking about this and this is replaying after I'm dead, but the idea that being fat is unhealthy is nothing new. For me and for others, maybe it's about a choice. Or maybe we should start fat shaming people again. How well did that work for people? Or maybe we should just start putting a tax on food, a federal tax like they do on cigarettes, and we should have a Surgeon General's warning with a big picture of a blob talking about eating this Whopper or quarter pounder could lead to heart disease. Doesn't an individual have the right to make a decision? Maybe not. We'll talk about that coming up. First, how about a phone number? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. So getting back to this, we've got this big study, and they have people that are ballooning up and everything else. It really comes down to, I think, here we have it, high blood pressure as well, developing chronic kidney disease, type 2 diabetes, all these other things. Shouldn't people have the choice to do that? And what do you define as fat? Somebody with a gut? Somebody with a big rump shaker? So we have these studies, and pretty soon it'll be Representative Omar, Tlaib, or Schumer, or somebody else saying that the government needs to decide what to do because the crisis is too big because we're failing. We'll talk more about that coming up. God bless you and your family. Ray, a great job as always. Don't go anywhere. Glenn Beck is next on your home for Fox News Radio, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning.